Ask Reddit by Holzak99. What's his story where the bad guys are actually, completely, 100% right, to the point where it's weird the story keeps calling them the bad guys? After being forced to watch this multiple times by the girlfriend, both Gilmore Girls and nearly everyone they dated, especially Rory. How dare he not let me cheat on him or randomly string him along for years? Everyone in Stars Hollow are blind to the walking catastrophes that are the Gilmores. All Iceman ever wanted was for Maverick to respect safety protocols instead of hot dogging all the time. The entire sequel is based on this premise. Iceman knows that the current commander is willing to let the pilots die to take out this target even though the safety protocols would say to go higher, and Iceman, who cares about the lives of his fellow pilots, knows that Maverick is the only one who is capable of teaching these pilots to fly to save their own lives. He's still the hero, still doing the right thing by the pilots. Mr. Belding from Saved by the Bell. Zach Morris is a fucking sociopath and his friends enabled and in some cases cheerfully alongside him. Ever watch Funny or Die's Zach Morris's trash series? Iceman in Top Gun. I used to work in naval aviation and he was totally right. Maverick was dangerous and unreliable. Edit. I really wasn't expecting this comment to blow up. I fully understand the meaning of bad guy, but in this instance I took it to mean anything from antagonist, villain, foil, or adversary, but this is Reddit and people are super pedantic and literal. My role was as a naval flight surgeon, so besides being my squadron's doctor I flew in the backseat with them, sat on mishap investigation boards, like the one depicted in the movie, and generally helped determine fitness for flight duty. Maverick wouldn't have lasted long with the antics he pulled and his personality eye roll, but where is the fun and drama in that? He really just seems calm and minding his own business in the original. Professional even. Mr. Wilson. I was a tween when the movie came out. I was infuriated when Martha had to go make sandwiches when the steaks got paint all over them. F. Dennis. Christopher Lloyd's character scared the crap out of me as a child, the homeless guy. Todd and Margot in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I can't imagine living next to someone so inconsiderate. He even caused literal property damage yet they are still uptight jerks. Yeah, there is an entire class of villains in comedies, especially where the bad guys are simply people who don't want their days and even lives ruined by the wacky fun-loving neighbors co-workers. That weird episode of Friends where Phoebe is convinced her dead mother is reincarnated as a cat so she tries to steal it from its owners, and Ross is presented as the bad guy for pointing out how ridiculous this is. I read that this plot was actually suggested by one of the main writers who had recently lost their own parent. Nobody wanted to point out that it was stupid because they didn't want to seem insensitive, so they all just went with it. Jack and the Beanstalk. Some dick finds the giant's house and starts taking all his best stuff. Deleted. Every single Donald Duck cartoon. Dude usually just wants to chill out without being bothered, and there's always someone bothering him and then he gets blamed for standing up for his own needs. The older I get, the more I empathize with Donald Duck. Disney understood that back in the day, too. His cartoons were actually more popular than Mickey's because he was more relatable. Ike. When Disney was asked to make a cartoon explaining how income tax helped the war effort during WWII, they chose Donald, because he would be relatively frustrated with the whole process at first but learn how it worked. I'm like 15 minutes into Thor: Love and Thunder and I completely understand Christian Bale's character. Also, once you become pseudo-possessed by a living weapon, are you mentally culpable for your actions? Gore was a victim who was taken advantage of by basically everyone. The entire season of Inhumans. Maximus is right, is attempting to free slaves. But the show is telling us to cheer for Black Bolt and the royal family. The ethics in that show are fucking bonkers, man. For those who don't know, everyone in the Inhuman Society gets exposed to gas which randomly mutates them, If the gas gives you a sexy mutation, you get to stay in your home with your family, but if the gas gives you an ugly mutation, you get sent to the mines as a lifelong slave, and the good guys are the people who uphold this system? And the bad guy is the person who thinks that the system is wrong? What the actual fuck, man? How did that shit get greenlit? Red Foreman was right. Eric and his friends were all dumbasses that need a boot in the ass. I agree, but he looked over Laurie misdeeds too much. Deleted. Most heist movies. Oh, he's doing it to afford medicine for his sick child. Okay, but he just killed 14 security guards, none of whom will be going home to their families now. Lol, in Once Upon a Time, Snow White's character is like wrecking henchmen and random nobody guard types W her bow and arrow, definitely killing PPL. Then she gets to the most evil character at the time, the literal evil queen and reason for all the bad shit going on. What does Snow White do? Decides now that she won't stoop to the queen's level and she will choose Merciel Mayo. Any rom-com where the main character cheats on their partner with the new love interest that they end up with. Plus the setup that they do to make the audience dislike the current partner in order to make the cheating more palatable is often super contrived. I watched one recently where the only offense the current partner committed was to step briefly out of the main character's company Christmas party to put the finishing touches on closing a huge sales deal at his job. I guess it was supposed to be movie shorthand for him being more interested in his work than in her, but the writers were super lazy about it because his choice seemed pretty reasonable in the moment and he was an otherwise likable character. He totally got shafted. Police Academy. They let a bunch of violent, unstable, dishonest deadbeats into the police force, and the chief of police was supposed to be okay with that? He was doing the public a favor by trying to weed out the worst ones. It's a different take, but Mahoney didn't even want to be there in the first place, but I think it was court ordered or something. In fact, most of them were misfits and probably never ever should have worn a uniform. That iceberg in Titanic is just minding its own business when it gets knocked on the head by the sex raft. All I can think of is the SNL Bow and Yang skit. This is a wild pull lol, but High School Musical. I'd be pissed if I worked my ass off for years to get the lead in a musical only for them to give it to someone else who didn't technically attend the auditions. Not to forget that Troy is the villain in HSM2 for trying to sort out his future as a college basketball player rather than fucking about. What about Bob? The therapist was 100% correct to set boundaries with his client. Obviously it went off the rails, but it was so shitty for his family to side with Bill Murray's character over Richard Dreyfuss' character. Especially because, during production, Bill Murray went off book so much it got Dreyfuss very pissed off. His anger at Murray in those later scenes was very real, although after the movie came out Dreyfuss said Murray's take had actually worked and made the film better. Peter Rabbit. He was a thief, a glutton, a trespasser, a burglar. A naughty little rabbit. Meanwhile, Mr. McGregor only wanted to produce something of value and feed his family. That guy in B movie. Girlfriend leaves him for a fucking B. Said B proceeds to gaslight him into thinking he's crazy. Anyway, that movie sure was weird. Law-abiding citizen does it well from both characters' perspective. Deleted. Hades in Mythology. Most of the time seen as the bad guy because he rules over the underworld, but he was sent there and he's just doing his job, maintain the souls inside, deliver punish when needed etc. And Zeus is a horrible guy. Hades is one of the most mild gods in there. When Hades came to realize how messed up the world was now that he had accidentally caused winter to be a thing, he used his powers to safeguard all the seeds of the world beneath the earth during that season so that they would be ready to bloom when his wife returned to her mother. Name one other Greek god that ever admitted to making a mistake and worked to correct it, for the sake of humans. Mrs. Doubtfire because Pierce Brosnan was really nice and was a lonely middle-aged man who wanted a family, but Mrs. Doubtfire was so mean to him and even tried to kill him with pepper knowing he was allergic. Don't forget that drive-by fruiting. Cabin in the Woods. Eldritch horrors will kill everything if occasionally some people aren't sacrificed to some silly ghosts or whatever. Yeah, and the 2 people who cause the end of the world still die instantly anyway. They sacrificed everything for nothing. Katherine Heigl's character in Knocked Up. When I watched it as a teenager I thought she was a frigid bitch who needed to lighten up and let Seth Rogen's character have fun. Now, as an adult in my 30s I'm like, wow, that dude did not have his shit together. I get why she was stressed out. Edit, please stop with the actually comments. I don't care. The biggest gripe I have with that movie is it pushed the baby will make him grow up lie. No it won't. Little Mermaid. It's my favorite Disney movie, but King Triton was not wrong to not want his teenage daughter shacking up with an adult man. Edit, since I can't respond to every post making the assertion King Triton was not the villain BC Ursula was the villain, there can be more than one villain. There can also be varying levels of antagonism. Ursula was very obviously the primary villain in TLM. However, this question asked us to identify a character that was essentially painted in a bad light to make the viewer feel a certain way about them when, in reality, that character was not as bad as the writing tried to make it seem. In my opinion, King Triton fits that description. As an adult I understand his concerns, but as a child he came across as mean, overbearing, and as one of the bad guys trying to stop true love. A 16-year-old wanted to run off and get married, and to add insult to injury she had to make permanent physical changes to her body. You'll have to forgive me if I empathize with King Triton more so now that I'm in. Fenris from the Norse mythology. 1. Taken from his home. 2. Everyone was afraid of him even though he did nothing. 3. Betrayed. 4. Chained. 5. Sword stuck in his open mouth, preventing him from closing it. 6. Laughed. 7. Imprisoned for many years. Tell me anyone who would not become crazy after something like this. He was also clever enough to know of the trap and very likely wouldn't dare to fight Odin, being aware of the consequences. Ironic is that we have nations doing worse for less. I think it's the most common interpretation of the mythology that the Norse gods doom themselves in their paranoia, like because they knew Fenrir was prophesied to try and kill them, they inadvertently provided him with the motivation to do so. Shere Khan just wanted to eat. He just wanted to keep humans out of the jungle too. Peter Pan. The pirates are just grown-up lost boys that he brought to Neverland. They just want to leave and return to their lives. Also, if you read the book, he's been kidnapping Wendy's female ancestors for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Every time the laundry and dirty dishes stack up too high, he goes to Earth and finds a Wendy to come clean up for him so he never, ever has to clean up for himself. At the end of the novel, he makes a deal with Wendy's parents that she can come to Neverland to take care of him for a few weeks every year. And when she gets too old, he takes her daughter, and then her daughter, and then her daughter. The Wendys never get to go on any of the adventures, of course, just stay back at headquarters and cook and clean for a team of disgusting and poorly behaved boys. The mom from Ice Princess. Figure skaters only make a career of it for like 5-ish years. She does point that out in the movie. Otto, a kid that smart could easily just start college at 23. Not the end of the world. Or, as the end compromise says, she can take classes part-time to also keep focus on her studies. And if she makes it anywhere near Olympics, which they hint at, no college in the world is turning her down when she retires. The Everybody Loves Raymond episode where Ray leaves Deborah and goes to an event without her because she's not ready on time after telling her he was going to leave her if she wasn't ready on time. To be honest, at least 50% of VLR episodes could fit on this list, some from Ray's perspective, and some from Deborah's. As someone who genuinely loves that show, it's kind of hard to watch without getting defensively angry on behalf of at least one character per episode. School of Rock. The principal and teachers are conned by a deadbeat who takes their kids' education hostage for half a year and then eventually the kids themselves for his own dream of winning Battle of the Bands at some random bar. Tom the Cat. He was trying to rid of the mouse that frequently stole food and trashed the house. Tom was just doing his job as the cat of the house. Jerry used to instigate and taunt him. One time he got Tom punished and he got his head chopped off by the guillotine. I Am Legend? At least the book. The Story of Medusa. I'd like a version of Medusa where in the end she just settles down with a nice blind man. Sharpay and Ryan from High School Musical. Troy and Gabriella didn't respect people's time, efforts, or even each other. And Troy folded the moment he was alone with his friends. They showed up late all the time. Sharpay and Ryan were just kids who knew what they wanted and worked their ass off for it since birth practically. They were such jerks to the composer, though. She wrote the show just for them to stomp all over her intentions because they had more standing in the drama department. That kind of behavior in a professional setting would get them fired. The Rock. In the end, the general just wanted benefits paid to families. I'm not about to kill 80,000 innocent people. Do you think I'm out of my fucking mind? We bluffed, they called it. The mission is over. Far Cry 4. Pagan Min was actually the good guy the entire time, granted he was an awful person, but best of a bad situation sort of thing. The true leader of the Golden Path, whichever one you side with, ends up turning on you after you deal Pagan, whether they're forcing children and women to be slaves or soldiers or just straight executing them. That's what the freedom fight comes to. AJ, the character you play as, is probably the only good person throughout the whole game and you get the choice to become leader of Golden Path by killing either Sabal or the chick. I forget her name, but anyways, Pagan was honest to AJ the whole time. If you wait like he tells you at the start of the game, he comes back and you spread the ashes like your mother wanted you to. That's the proper ending of the game and it takes 15 minutes. You avoid the civil war and being abducted entirely. I never. To quote Pagan himself, now, before we begin, to whom am I speaking? The son who returned to scatter his mother's ashes, or the lunatic who murdered his way to the top of my mountain? Moby Dick. The good guys were whalers and had killed his family who he was simply avenging. The farmer in Skyrim. They were victims. They were snow elves driven underground by the Nords who invaded their homeland, and they tried to be friendly with the dwarfs, who then blinded them and turned them into these violent creatures. Then some arsehole comes along, invades their cave, shouts fire at them, steals their shit and kills them. I believe the story goes a snow elves, ancient farmer, had an uneasy relationship with the Nords. The Nords found the Eye of Magnus and the snow elves invaded and slaughtered the people of the settlement. This led to a war that the snow elves eventually lost and were forced underground in retreat. The Dwemer took them in but ended up poisoning them and turned them into essentially slaves. They were victimizers and also victims, but most certainly not completely 100% right. Squidward is not necessarily a bad guy, but as an adult you feel a lot more for him and how annoying SpongeBob would be to have as a neighbor co-worker. Yes, but when Squidward moves to paradise he gets extremely bored and ends up missing SpongeBob. Continuum is a sci-fi show where terrorists travel back in time from the near future to try and change history. The main character gets trapped in the past with them and has to try and prevent them from changing anything. Except the future they are trying to change is one where society is ruled by a corporate congress, humans' rights are basically out the window and things are pretty fucked up. From the get-go you kind of want the bad guys to win. Neil from the Santa Claus. He loved Charlie and works so hard to be a good stepdad. That's honestly in a lot of movies like that. The stepdad is genuinely a nice person but he's dating the protagonist's ex, which the protagonist repeatedly goes out of their way to be an actual terrible person and then gets back with their ex at the end. The bad guys in Bravely Default try to stop the 4 protagonists from completing their goal pretty much from the start of the game. At around 2/3 to 3/4 into the game, it turns out that they were trying to stop them, because the protagonists had been tricked by an ally into actually doing the bad thing. So not only were the bad guys trying to actually save the world, the protagonists were actually the ones that almost ended the world in the first place. Where the Fairy Flies. The change in the title screen toward the end really blew my mind a bit. They flipped this around in Mistborn edit. See how I put the title of the story I'm including spoilers for in the first paragraph, then the second paragraph starts recapping the events of the series in a way that is obviously going to contain spoilers? Maybe take that as a cue to stop reading here if you don't want spoilers, rather than sending me an Instagram. In Mistborn, there's like a Darth Vader style supervillain ruling the world in a cruel manner. The first book is the good guys fighting him and killing him. Then the next 2 books are them realizing that there was this magical evil force that the bad guy had defeated a long time before the events of the book and had been actively preventing from returning. When the good guys killed the bad guy, they freed the evil force and things got a whole lot worse than they had been. As the series progresses, the original bad guy is never really redeemed. He was a vicious and cruel ruler, but they realize what he had achieved in defeating the evil force, as well as preparing supplies and other things to help fight the evil force if it ever got released again. The McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit lady. Piggybacking for the dingo ate my baby lady. Not that she was a bad guy in the traditional sense, but she was ridiculed and mocked and then criticized for wasting police officers' time. All the while Wild Dingus actually did take her baby and killed it for food. Eater, I didn't mention she did jail time for allegedly killing her child.